I could feel very high.
It's a new day, but not on the Enterprise. We're in a shuttle with Tucker as he tests an upgraded autopilot. Somebody doesn't seem to approve, as a call from Archer informs him of an incoming ship of a similar size, and a bit of pooping from it soon has Tucker crashing on one of the many moons around the planet he was using for a test. Unfortunately, nobody back on the Enterprise can be entirely sure what just happened beyond some violence. We'll check the area, obviously, but there are over 60 moons, which means it's going to take a while. The good news is that Tucker managed to hit a moon with an atmosphere and vegetation. The bad news is something in that same atmosphere buggered his engine, so he's not going anywhere. The phone might still work with a little tinkering, so he starts on that. It's during this that he hears a noise and goes to investigate. Whoever made the noise takes a dim view of being interrupted and poops a bit of green, causing Tucker to leg it back into the shuttle. A glance out of the door shows that while Tucker was taking cover, whoever was on the other end of the pooping has now nicked his phone. Up in space, another ship has just arrived. T'Pol gives Archer a quick warning that this species are a tad on the defensive side before they call us, which would certainly explain them telling us to immediately piss off because we're in their territory. Seeing we have a Vulcan aboard certainly doesn't help matters, so that's another first contact they've bollocksed up for us. Telling him we're here looking for a lost crew member leads to him revealing they've also lost contact with the ship. Under the circumstances, having two pairs of eyes might be more useful, and it's certainly the quickest way to get us to bugger off, given that we're not leaving until we know, so he agrees to a joint search. Tucker's not waiting around for rescue. He's gone in search of the nicked phone gubbins and has found the camp of his opposite number, one that he discovers has been set up with laser tripwires. As Tucker's opposite number is going to be around for a while, let's drag out the wheel of names and see what we'll be calling him. Ursus Orman, provided by Ensign Cass. Looks like Ursus Orman is in a similar situation to Tucker, and his engines have fallen foul of whatever shit's in this planet's atmosphere. At least that's what Tucker thinks when he's recording a log back at the shuttle. A shared problem might have been useful if Tucker had a translator with him to call a truce, but he doesn't. On the plus side, the moon is starting to warm up, presumably because of the titular dawn, thinks Tucker. Perhaps the oncoming light is why Tucker decides to act now. Back at Ursus Orman's camp, we hear Tucker explain that he's going to show himself and just wants to talk. Ursus follows the sound and finds only a tablet playing a recording, because the real Tucker is back at the camp trying to recover his phone. Ursus Orman trips one of his own alarms on the way back, giving Tucker a chance to hide and jump him. Tucker wins the first fight, only for another one to start seconds after. The new one ends poorly for him, and a shot to the tits results in Tucker taking a little nap. Tucker is on the receiving end of Ursus Orman putting the boot in and banging him against a rock. This, apparently, is how Ursus wakes people up, as he motions Tucker towards his nicked phone with the expectation of it being repaired. Ursus doesn't have a translator either, so Tucker has difficulty explaining it's buggered. Some gun pointing and quiet threats make Tucker understand trying to repair Ursus Orman's phone instead, and not cause trouble in the process, would probably be smart. Back up on the Enterprise, the joint search continues while T'Pol gives Archer some background about this species, the Arconians. Vulcans met them about 100 years back, and unlike humans, they were less inclined to listen to the advice of their betters. This, at least from the Vulcan perspective, meant they got filed under the heading of bloody awkward, so the Vulcans left them alone and buggered off. Archer seems more inclined to give them a chance, despite T'Pol's warnings, though that might be more to do with halving the number of moons we need to search. To the moon once more, and the approaching dawn means Tucker no longer needs a torch. Not that it helps, as Tucker's experiencing some technical problems. A minor kaboom has him swearing, which Ursus Orman copies. That's as close to diplomacy as we've come to date, and an exchange of names puts them on better terms. Tucker asking for water, and then spitting it out when he discovers what he's given was anything but, sours things a little. Asking Ursus if we can return to our shuttle for a drink he can stomach is either not understood or ignored, so he gets back to work. A little oopsie later on leaves him with a nasty cut. Ursus spitting on it has Tucker concerned until he notes the wound has now fully healed. The newfound camaraderie is immediately pissed on when Tucker tries to explain that he can't fix Ursus's phone and uses the distraction as cover to attack him. The gun changes hands once more and Tucker has Ursus Orman pick up the gubbins to take back to our shuttle. Up on the Enterprise, we've identified a minor wrinkle. The moons we're searching appear to go through quite significant temperature variations. The nights are slightly sub-zero, which is perfectly survivable, but the days can hit 170 degrees Celsius, a temperature likely to result in a very crispy Tucker indeed. Just as well that Tucker's making progress then. Ursus Orman is tied up back at our shuttle after hoofing it there with all the gubbins, and after exchanging some more words and food that Ursus can't eat, Tucker thinks he can rig up a working phone by cannibalizing both buggered ones. It's a partial success. The phone works, but the signal sucks balls, so he tries to explain to Ursus that they should work together to carry it up higher. Tossing the gun aside and untying Ursus results in another fight, which is only fair when Tucker started one during the last attempt at diplomacy. The two have a bit of a wrestle, with neither achieving success, then give up when their bodies tell them it's more trouble than it's worth. Tucker tosses the gun aside once more, and this time Ursus Orman decides working together is probably less of a pain in the arse. The Enterprise is receiving a phone call. Hoshi doesn't know who it's from, which presumably means it's not the other ship, so she tries to track it down. Quickly would be wise, as Tucker and Ursus Orman have been calling for a couple of hours by this point, and it's starting to get a wee bit warm. He suspects Ursus can't handle the heat quite as well as him, a guess that seems to be accurate based on Ursus's deterioration later. It's with no small relief that Tucker receives a call back from the Enterprise in orbit. Tucker tells them about his companion and warns them not to send a shuttle because of the engine knackering stuff in the atmosphere, but Archer thinks it won't affect teleporting. He's about to give the order when Phlox makes his contractually mandated appearance. While everybody else was hunting, he took the liberty of checking on Arconian biology. Presumably the Vulcans found out enough about them before they buggered off. Regardless, he thinks a dehydrated Arconian trying to go through a teleporter would probably make him do a dead because science reasons. Archer delivers the news and says he'll tell the Arconians, then suggests Tucker should come back alone. Tucker tells him to piss off at this suggestion. Besides, fiddling with Ursus Orman's ship gave him some ideas, and he thinks one could be modified to resist the atmospheric engine buggery. Archer agrees to tell the Arconians to try it, though with a warning that he'll teleport Tucker back if it takes too long. Sometime later, Tucker's pouring water over Ursus to try and keep him conscious. The phone's not working anymore, melted he assumes, so he's monologuing about past experiences to let we viewers know how hopeless it is. Obviously, this is the point at which he sees a ship in the distance, and he wakes Ursus to watch the arrival of their saviour together. Archer's receiving the Arconian captain because, for some reason, their craft brought Tucker and Ursus Orman back here. Maybe it was because we've got better medical facilities and not due to being cheaper than building a new set. Either way, it gives the Arconian captain a chance to say he'll discipline his pilot if there was no cause to fire. Then he tells us he expects the Enterprise to piss off as soon as possible like we agreed, so it's not exactly a resounding success on the diplomatic front. T'Pol says it's better than the Vulcans ever managed in 100 years though, which is a bonus. Down in sick bay, Tucker's finally able to talk to Ursus Orman through a translator. If he was hoping for thanks, he's shit out of luck, though Ursus saying he's glad he didn't kill Tucker is probably close enough, so we'll leave Tucker to wonder why he keeps getting stranded in places that are trying to roast him. Seriously though, this is the third fucking time, as we get ready to take another step on the long road. There's an old science fiction film from the 80s which, based on the likely demographic of people watching these videos, has an above-average chance of being one you've heard of. Based on that same demographic, you're also probably saying something along the lines of, "It's not that old," then realizing it was 40 years ago and crumbling into dust. Anywho, Enemy Mine was a story about a human and an alien who, after a bit of a Barney in orbit, both crash land on a planet. While initially confrontational, they eventually overcome their mutual distrust and find a way of working together to survive. The novella by Barry B. Longyear, upon which the film was based, won both a Nebula and a Hugo, by the way, though the film was a financial disaster. I mention it here because the observant among you may have noted one or two minor similarities between that story and today's episode. Not that I'm saying Enemy Mine did enemies to friends against a common problem first, and I'm sure there are plenty of you already scrolling down to the comments to tell me it was hell in the Pacific, or even Pontius Pilate and Herod in the Bible, but Enemy Mine is arguably the most notable. Now, as ever, I'm not suggesting today's episode bearing a striking resemblance to other popular media was a deliberate Jesus fucking Christ! Hey Steve, have you seen this shit? How did they not get sued? I'm sorry, where was I? Oh, yes. Now, I'm not suggesting today's episode bearing a striking resemblance to other popular media was a deliberate choice on the part of those making Enterprise, but we know what plain simple Garak thinks about coincidences, don't we? With those aspersions well and truly cast, let's look at the story itself. It'll come as no surprise that I consider it unoriginal based on what's just been said, but that's not the same as being bad. The last kebab I ate wasn't a new concept, and my enjoyment of it didn't suffer as a result. There's enough here to make it sufficiently interesting. It tops the last time Tucker got stranded with someone in the part of antagonist, just 2 episodes back at least. Tucker having more chemistry with a character who doesn't speak the same language and wants to kill him certainly serves to corroborate my misgivings about precious cargo. There are some holes to pick, I suppose. I guess we could ask why Archer didn't just teleport down a pair of EV suits or some such, rather than simply shoving his thumb up his arse and waiting. Tucker's monologue felt a bit overdone to me as well, and I'd have rather seen the time we spent on that replaced with a little more exploration of Vulcan-Arconian relations. Neither are deal-breakers, though, and I think most people going into this one will find it sufficiently entertaining if they can look past the... let's call it inspiration, shall we? How much of that is due to the original concept rather than what Trek actually does with it is open to debate. It's not just a throwaway episode, though, as we get another glimpse at Vulcan diplomacy with other species. We learn that Andorians are not alone in being less enamored by Vulcans than we humans are, as the Arconians thought they were a bunch of dicks too. You could add the rebels on Corridon as a further group who distrust the Vulcans, but there's some debate over whether that was orchestrated by the Andorians. Today's episode gives us another example, only this time with no indication of outside influence. More interestingly, though, is the reason T'Pol gives for their breakdown in relations with the Arconians. When talking about humans, the first thing she lists as a positive in our favour is that we were willing to accept Vulcan guidance. Before mentioning diplomacy or culture swaps, T'Pol specifically references that we were open to the Vulcan way of doing things. It's quite telling that she mentions this point first. We've had hints for a while that Vulcan advice may not always be to our own benefit, and incidents like Pajem have shown the Vulcans aren't above being proper two-faced bastards. This point also ties into the nods we've had towards that streak of Vulcan arrogance, the certainty of their own superiority. It's easier to excuse questionable actions when you believe your way is the best way. Anything dubious is just a means to an end, sacrifices made for the benefit of the majority. We also get a pleasing counterpoint to this possible Freudian slip later on. T'Pol observes Archer has been more successful with Arconian diplomacy in a single day than Vulcans were in an entire century, possibly indicating some movement towards a conclusion that the Vulcan approach is inferior, at least in some cases. Maybe some Vulcans would choose to frame that as barbarians being a better match for dealing with other barbarians, but T'Pol at least doesn't appear to be interested in sugar-coating the results to save face. For as much as we've seen Archer learning to accept how some Vulcan practices do indeed have a purpose, such as that self-professed emphasis on non-interference, it's worth also remembering that he's not the only student, nor T'Pol the only teacher. I don't know whether this display of the value in learning from each other was meant to be an intentional nod to what will arguably become the main strength of the Federation, or if it was just a happy accident. Either way, it's still a welcome moral, and a reminder that introspection is one of the most valuable tools in improving oneself. End of episode.
I see you've decided to turn up then.
Don't be a dick.
You're the one that went off for a little hissy bitch fit.
For your information, I were engaged in quiet contemplation.
Really? And what conclusions did you come to on this spiritual retreat?
That the guy who makes these is an arsehole, so it don't matter what he thinks.
Fair enough. Want to hear this week's idea for how to waste some time?
Yeah, why not? What you got for us today?
Is there anything in the world that conjures up feelings of good cheer more than the word musical?
How about guillotine?
Don't be like that.
Look, I'm not against it per se, but remember the one time we did a song before?
You mean the apology song for when you bit that guy on the jolly sausage?
Yes, the apology song for when I bit that guy on the jolly sausage. For viewers who've not been following along, it was Season 2, Episode 8 of Deep Space Nine.
What a handy reference for newcomers. Anyway, what about it?
Well, put bluntly, the guy who makes these can't sing for shit. I wouldn't mind, except he does my voice, so that means I can't sing for shit either.
That never stopped Shatner.
Yeah, but I've got an ounce of self-awareness. Oh.